So, you want to be vegan? Cute. Let me tell you why that's probably not happening. It's said that around 87% of vegans will abandon veganism within a year of being vegan. So that means only 13% of people who go vegan actually stay with it longer than a year. And this is not going to be a video telling you why it's so great to be vegan or why it's so easy to be vegan. I'm just going to keep it really honest, really raw with you guys today and say why I honestly don't think that you will go vegan. And if you try, you're probably going to fail. Is it the lack of protein? Are they overdosing on too many vegetables? According to a study done by Faunalytics, not health but actually practicality was the main reason why people abandoned veganism. Today, I'm going to be telling you guys the 10 reasons why I think you will fail at being vegan. Number one is social challenges. Being vegan in a non-vegan world can be very socially challenging at times. You're going out with your friends or your family to eat, or maybe they cook a dinner for you and you don't want to be rude and say no. Maybe somebody bakes you a cookie or a cake and you feel bad rejecting that. That's one instance where social situations can make it difficult, but beyond just not being able to eat the same things as people, you will experience a lot of questions from people, a lot of arguments from people, even if you're not trying to get into debates about veganism. A lot of people will feel triggered just by your very existence. And a lot of people will be curious as well, genuinely curious, but then once you start to give your reasons, they're going to shift into a defensive mode, and it's just creating conflict everywhere you go, especially if you don't know how to navigate it correctly, which for a new vegan can be very difficult. So for that reason, I think you're going to fail. On top of that, dating when there's no other vegans around, and then now that's an added layer of having to tell people, hey, I'm vegan, and then they worry about where can I take her to dinner? Um, what if I don't know, any scenario. What if I want to take her to the zoo or the aquarium? And then you don't want to maybe kiss someone who just ate a carcass because you guys are on two totally different lifestyles. So that's going to be really difficult. I think the power to conform in most cases is more powerful than the desire to follow your ethics or live a more ethical lifestyle. So that's why I think you'll fail at being vegan. The second reason why I think you're going to fail at being vegan is because you're probably treating it like a diet. So I don't know about you, but I've never stuck to a diet in my whole life. Nobody sticks to a diet. That's why it's a diet and not a lifestyle. So if you see being vegan as a diet, you're definitely not going to stay on this lifestyle. Diets are hard. They require sheer willpower. And anything that requires willpower is unsustainable, essentially. Yes, everything might require some willpower in the beginning, but if you are having to constantly tell yourself, no, I can't have this, I can't have this, that's restriction, and that is definitely going to make you fail at being vegan. The other reason you're going to fail because you see vegan as just a diet is because you're going to cheat. You can cheat on diets, whereas an ethical system you can't really cheat on. If you're ethically against harming dogs, you can't just harm dogs one day when you feel like it. That's a complete shift in your ethics. You can't just flip flop. Another major sign that you're already failing at being vegan is that you still exploit animals in other ways apart from your food. So if you're still going to the circus, the rodeo, you're riding horses, or you're buying leather shoes, leather bags, you're buying products tested on animals, then that's a major reason that you're going to fail at being vegan, because you're just being a hypocrite at that point. The third sign that you are definitely going to fail at being vegan is that you don't use any replacement products and you're afraid of anything that's processed. The reason that you're going to fail at being vegan is because you have spent your entire life eating meat, eating cheese, eating eggs, and then overnight you're just going to not have any of those foods ever again, and you expect yourself to never crave those foods again. So even if you don't think that eating plant-based meats, plant-based eggs is healthy long term, which the science would disagree with you because they've done side by sides of plant-based meats versus animal meat, and the health outcome data is very significant. So that's something I would encourage you to look into on your own. But even if you don't want to eat these foods long term, I would suggest you still, at least when you're transitioning, try the plant-based burgers, try the plant-based sausage, try the plant-based chicken nuggets, any foods that you're used to eating, the cheeses. Try the vegan versions and find an alternative that you love. And I would say incorporate it for at least a few years before you even consider cutting out any replacement products. It might sound extreme to say take a few years to transition away from these foods, but you're transitioning away from these highly dense, high in protein, hormone filled foods that are super dense in calories, and then you're transitioning to a plant-based diet where everything's going to be higher in fiber, higher in water, lower in calories, lower in fats. And so your body's going to be craving those foods, and it's going to be craving those flavors too that you're familiar with and the textures that we've grown up our entire life. So the cool thing is, even if you don't want to eat vegan meats like every day for the rest of your life, or maybe you want to cut them out completely, I would say go a few years eating these alternatives, so that way if you do decide to try to go to, more unprocessed diet and you start having these cravings, you're not going to go back to the ones that harm animals. You would go back to the plant-based ones. But most people miss this, and you probably are going to miss this as well. So that's why I think that you're going to fail at going vegan. Number 4, it's similar to number 3, but this is if you choose to focus on cleansing foods. So when I say cleansing foods, I mean raw fruits, raw vegetables, and maybe some nuts and seeds, like a more raw diet, or maybe just completely whole foods, no processed foods at all. Or maybe you're someone who fears an entire food group, like you don't want any starches, you don't want any legumes. There's people who go online saying that legumes are bad for you, when that's literally been shown in studies to be the number one dietary factor of a long lifespan. So legumes are most associated with longer lifespan. And I've also seen this in studies done on the blue zones. In all of the blue zones, so areas in the world with the longest living populations, they incorporate legumes usually multiple times a day. So these foods are incredibly healthy. And I'm not to say that you can't be healthy on a raw vegan diet, or that there's no purpose to cleansing or fasting or any of these things. But when you're first transitioning to a vegan lifestyle, you don't want to be doing any sort of extremes with your diet. So avoid the extremes. Just try to eat a balanced diet. Try to aim for a lot of variety and different colors in your food. Don't overthink it. Another reason that you're going to fail at going vegan is because you think you need a PhD in nutrition in order to be healthy as a vegan, when really you just need to eat enough. So if you are from that common habit that so many people have of portion controlling and restricting your calories, then you are probably definitely going to fail at being vegan. Because I'm sure you've all seen those charts in school where they show a stomach that's full of plants and then a stomach that has like meat or oil in it. And you can see that the meat and the oil are taking up such a small amount of the stomach, and then the plants, for the same amount of calories, fills up your entire stomach. And so when you do switch to a plant exclusive diet, Your foods are going to be more filling, more satiating, but they're going to be lower in calories. So that's why when you come from eating animal flesh that's dense in calories and you're used to having these small portions with, again, the cheese, the eggs, all these high fat foods, and you switch to a high fiber diet, you are going to need larger portions in order to get the same amount of calories, and you might have to even eat more times throughout the day, especially while you're transitioning still and figuring out what to eat and what satisfies you. But you're probably not going to do that. You're probably just going to eat some celery and some lettuce for lunch and then wonder why you feel like shit and blame it on a vegan diet. Of course. The fifth reason you're going to fail at going vegan is you're probably going to overcomplicate it and you're going to try to be perfect. So you're going to worry about every single item you buy, even if you've read the ingredients, even if you've Google searched it. Every restaurant you go to, you're going to question if you're getting the right thing. You're going to feel like a failure because you make a mistake. And that's why you're definitely going to fail at going vegan, because you're not going to let yourself make mistakes in the beginning. You're not going to let yourself do your best. Your all or nothing mentality is really ruining your progress. And after you overcomplicate this, after you shame and blame yourself, you're going to get so overwhelmed, shut down, and just go back to being apathetic. Go back to harming animals because you don't want to think about the impact that your actions have. And you don't want to have that little bit of guilt when you accidentally forget to ask for no cheese on your burrito, or when you buy a lipstick that you thought was really pretty and you forgot to check the brand. The sixth reason why you're going to fail at going vegan is because you're going to let other people's opinions matter way too much. You're going to allow yourself to be swayed by fears. People are going to plant seeds of fear in you. The media is going to plant seeds of fear in you. And you're not doing anything to reaffirm or recommit to your beliefs. You are reverting back to your old ways of thinking, your old ways of programming, because you're basically just conforming again to what the majority of people believe because you did not fully commit to what you were deciding to do. And you lack confidence in yourself. You don't trust your own intuition. You trust outside sources more than your own feelings. And that's why you're going to fail at being vegan. The seventh reason why you're going to fail at being vegan is that you have not done your research. You haven't watched any documentaries. You haven't listened to any animal rights activists. You haven't learned about the movement. You haven't exposed yourself to the footage. You don't know what actually happens to animals on farms, in rodeos, in the leather industry, in cosmetic testing, medical testing, zoos, circuses, what happens to fish in the ocean. And you don't need to know every single thing. But if you don't at least understand why you're being vegan, how the hell do you expect to stay vegan? You are definitely going to fail. And not only do you not understand the farming industry or the cruel practices enacted on animals, you also don't understand nutrition. You haven't seeked out any nutrition experts in the plant-based field. You haven't listened to any doctors. You haven't researched any studies on these topics. You're just going based off of maybe what you see posted on Facebook or Instagram here and there, what one of your friends says or an influencer says, or maybe these media figures who are a lot more popular than the plant-based ones because they are the minority, and people tend to listen to those who reaffirm their bad habits rather than discouraging them. So all of the popular media figures right now are encouraging more bacon and eggs, more steak and eggs, essentially, just like everybody wants to hear. The eighth reason you're gonna fail at being vegan is you think this is gonna be some sort of magical cure all. Maybe you heard stories online of this fixed everything, and you think you're never gonna get sick again. You're never gonna feel bad again. You're never gonna have another health struggle ever again. And I will always emphasize the fact that being vegan has improved my health so much, improves the health of so many people, and is so preventative against all of the leading causes of death. But that doesn't mean that you are never going to feel bad again. You're never going to have any health struggles or dips in energy, or that you're never going to have to reassess maybe what you're eating, how you're eating, your lifestyle, your sleep, your exercise. Obviously, there's so many things apart from nutrition. So you need to make sure that you have everything in line. You can't just eat well and neglect other areas of your life and then expect to be healthy. So the other reason you're going to fail is because as soon as you hit a rut, you're going to blame it on the vegan diet, because that fits the narrative of what everyone has been telling you the whole time, of that you are not going to get what you need. And so your mind immediately jumps to fear rather than trying to reassess it within your ethics. For me, it's not a choice. If I was feeling bad, if I was feeling like I was deficient in something, I would go and get a blood test. I would find out what needs to be done. I would supplement. It hasn't ever gotten to that point. But if it did, I would never step away from my ethics, because that's not even an option. It's not an option for me to use, commodify, or cause sentient beings to be tortured and suffer and live a life that I would not wish on anybody. I'm not going to do that to somebody out of fear that I need something. This leads me into the ninth reason why I think that you're going to fail at going vegan, and that's because you still see animals as commodities. You have embraced the idea that you don't want to eat animals, but unless you have completely rejected in your mind the idea that animals are here for us to use in any way, then you are going to fail at being vegan. If you don't do anything to reinforce your beliefs, if you don't stick up for your beliefs, if you don't defend your beliefs in this non vegan world, if you don't look for community, either in person or online, and if you don't feel like your choices are making an impact, then you're definitely going to fail at being vegan. Whew. No wonder that we are in the 1%.